Hi there, Bill DeYoung with you once again with the Catalyst sessions for, yeah, it's Wednesday. Yeah, it's hard to remember sometimes. Hey, let's go up to the verdant green fields of Michigan to Mackinac Island to say hello to our friends Monica Kile and Jon Kile. Hey, guys.
Hello.
What's up?
These guys are road warriors, and they're up there in the north with their two kids having fun, I hope.
Yes.
Jon, you were saying it's 60 degrees there?
It is 60 degrees, and it's actually kind of warm today compared to the last couple of days. So,
when did this great adventure start? How long have you guys been on the road this time?
We've been on the road this time just about a month. We were home for about 3 weeks, and before that we were out another month this summer. So this summer and fall we've been out 2 months.
Wow. And how long is this trip going to last? I mean,
the goal is to be back in St. Pete at the beginning of October. And then to go back out at some point.
Oh yeah, I mean, but you're homeschooling the guys, so it's not like they've got to be back for school or anything.
Why we're here.
This is kind of it. I think it's so amazing, and you've been doing this for a while, Jon. I've been reading your blog, but this has been sort of your lifestyle for a while now. It's just don't make me turn this van around, you know.
Yeah, 3 summers ago, we had a Dodge conversion van, you know, with the carpet and everything.
Oh yeah.
That Monica actually found on Craigslist, and we traveled for 2 months that summer. That was 2018, and then each summer after that, you know, 2019, and now this is our 3rd summer. Each year we've kind of moved to a different vehicle. Last year was a Volkswagen Euro van with the pop top tent, and then this summer with the pandemic and everything, we felt like we needed the full-on restroom and shower, so we got an RV.
Wow.
So we're in a Class C RV. We've been traveling all over the place.
You're living the dream, man. Where did this wanderlust come from? I mean, obviously we've all had a lot of life changes, and you guys have too, but was this always in you? Like, yeah, I love.
Always.
Yeah.
Since I was a kid, my parents took us on a vacation every summer, even though, you know, it was only 1 week, but we always went on a vacation. And there's our daughter, Anna. And then really since Jon and I met, we've been, you know, Europe and South America, and, you know, and then when our work situations changed, we just decided, you know, and then with the pandemic, it's like, well, what a great time to see America. So, and there's so much to see. It's like never ending, you know. You can really drill down, which is the fun part when you've got time, you know, and get to some of these off the road places instead of just going to Yellowstone and Yosemite, which are awesome. We love those places, but to be able to get into some of these little state parks, it's incredible.
Well, it's, you know, for me, it's so admirable, because I'm the kind of person that, like, well, a really expansive trip is, we went to visit my brother in Dixie County last weekend up in Steenhatchee. It was like, woohoo, we're out of town. I mean, I can't even imagine doing what you guys are doing. You know, I bought for my wife tickets to go on the ferry from Fort Myers to Key West for her birthday last year. We haven't used it yet. I don't know when the hell we're going to get to it.
Oh, it's really fun. You should do that.
Oh, you've done this?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's really fun.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Let's talk about the kids for a minute. It's James and Anna, and they are how old?
They're 10 and 7. Can you see them right there? Is that them, or is that? Yeah, I think that's them in the background. They're over there. James is 10 and Anna's 7.
Wow. And I've been reading where you say that they've really adapted to this lifestyle, that they're sort of old pros at it now.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day when we 2 summers ago, we were in New Mexico, and we started out on this hike, and Anna just pitched a huge fit, and I had a mental breakdown, and Jon said, okay, I'll take them, and I'll go with kids, you go for the hike, which was good that we did, because it was a tough hike. But comparing that to this year, we're like, they'll walk 10 miles. We were in Manhattan recently, and they walked 10 miles and literally didn't complain. Now we bribe Anna with ice cream and chocolate bars, but
that works with me too. Yeah.
So they literally don't. We just rode 8 miles around the island on our bikes, and they didn't complain at all. It was great.
Well, 8 miles around. It's Mackinac.
Yeah, it's spelled Mackinac, but it's pronounced Mackinac.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad I didn't try then, because yeah. So they've been traveling. She's 5.
She's 7.
She's okay. So, and he's what, 9, 10?
10. Yeah. 10.
I should have this memorized. Sorry. So they've been doing this for a while, though, and I mean, do they get to decide? Well, no, we don't want to go back to St. Petersburg. Let's go to Texas. I mean, are they that way now?
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty happy. We've discovered that the RV is extremely comfortable, which makes a big difference than you know, compared to when we were in a van tent. So they're happy. I think they recognize, because we sort of drilled it into them, that you know the alternative would be online schooling at home, which you know they'd be in front of a computer until 3 o'clock every day, or you know going into a school and wearing a mask all day, which really wasn't an option for them anyway. But I think they realize you know they've got it pretty good right now.
And they get along extremely well for siblings. They are, especially in the pandemic, they've become best friends, you know.
I'm here to tell you that my kids are in their 30s and they've only started to get along in the last maybe 10 years. You know, those
I don't speak for my sister, so I get it.
Those are trying times. Hey, listen, Monica, I read somewhere, or you said somewhere, that you came to St. Petersburg for your graduate study. I think that's what you said. Where are you from originally?
Jacksonville, Florida, so not too far. Ray Arsenault, who's a pretty well-known historian, and he's my cousin, and so I was actually planning on going to get a master's in history at UNF in Jacksonville, and I bumped into, really kind of met Ray. I'd met him a couple times as a child, but didn't really know him at my grandmother's 90th birthday party, and I told him I was about to start this master's program in history, but that I wanted to study Florida because I was working as a tour guide in St. Augustine. Yeah. And his eyes got real big, and he's like, "Well, are you mobile? Are you willing to travel?" And I was like 24 or something, and I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he said, "Well, we're just starting this program at USF St. Pete, the Florida Studies program, and they had full graduate assistantship, so you know you got a full ride, and you got some extra money to be an assistant to the professors. It was awesome. So I moved down to St. Pete.
You were a tour guide in San Augustine. Where did you work at the Castillo? Where were you?
No, those are national park employees. I worked for one of the tour companies called Tour St. Augustine.
Well, with the horse-drawn carriage kind of thing?
No, I did mostly like school.
What a job.
Yeah, exactly. No, I didn't want to have to learn how to drive a horse. No, it was mostly walking tours and bus tours with school groups and retirees. So.
Well, it's funny because we lived in Savannah for about 6 years before we moved back here to my hometown, and you know, the story is they have those horse-drawn tour carriages around the squares that piss off everybody driving cars. But the story goes that they make up half the shit they talk about. That's, you know, the tourists don't know the difference. Have you heard this?
Well, so I went to professional tour guide school, which I know sounds like a joke, but it's like, it's a real thing. It's called the International.
Yes, it does.
It was the best education in all my years of education. The best education I got was at the International Tour Management Institute, which is in San Francisco. Wow. And it's this like intensive 3-week. They're teaching people basically to be tour directors. So like over the road tours on motor coaches, or, you know, all the Alaskan cruise guides, people like that go through ITMI. And it was fantastic. And really taught me a lot about like group management, how to deal with large groups of people, how to speak so that people can hear you, how to put together a tour. And, you know, obviously authenticity and believability are good qualities for a tour guide to have. So the thing is, if you're going to make something up, you got to be able to, if you're going to make it up, you have to be able to sell it. That's the real thing. You got to say it with confidence. It's not true.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Where did your interest in history come from?
I've just always had it. You know, my dad likes history, and I've always been a big reader, and I've just always loved history. I wanted to major in history in college, and my dad told me not to. And I distinctly remember he was like, "What are you going to do with a history degree? Become a teacher?" And you know, I'm like, well, "What's the matter with being a teacher?"
Yeah, that's okay.
So I know. So I minored in history, and I always badger my dad about that, because I really should have gone all the way through and gotten a PhD like my cousin. But so I always beat my dad up about that bad advice he gave me.
Jon, where are you from?
I grew up in Southern California, and then moved to the metropolis of Live Oak, Florida, when I was 15 years old.
I know Live Oak well.
Finished high school there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you? Wow.
Oh, Spirit of the Swanee Music Park. No, I was a newspaper editor in Gainesville.
Yeah, I wondered if that's
I know Live Oak well.
Oh,
yeah.
right, yeah. So that's where we would go to like the mall was Gainesville, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Ended
the
up in
Oaks
St.
Mall.
James when I was, I was working in university fundraising actually, and I went to work for USF for several years before I went into sales. But I've been in Florida since '89.
Okay, well, let's, for those of us who don't know, including me, what's the Lovebird story? How did you guys meet? And how did this magical Wonderland fairy tale begin?
That's a good Florida story.
Yeah, it is a good Florida story.
Okay.
Ray Arsenault and Gary Mormino, who's like the Florida historian, they both play into it. So John was working at the university, and I was coming down the stairs out of my building. I lived right across the street from the university, and John was with Ray Arsenault and John Hope Franklin, who was this preeminent African-American historian, who was Ray's very close friend. And they were walking down the sidewalk, and I thought, who is that good-looking guy? And the whole time, Ray never introduced us. So we're kind of looking at each other. Ray never introduced us. And then a couple of months later, we were at Gary Mormino's book launch party for Land of Sunshine, State of Dreams. Mm-hmm. And John was there, and I was working because I worked for the Florida Humanities Council. They put the party on. So that's where we met.
So was it sort of like, hey, Ray, introduce me to that guy?
Yeah. What? Yeah. Later, I was like, what's the matter with you, Ray? So I gave him a hard time about it later.
So you guys have been married for how long?
12 years. Yeah.
Fantastic. Can we talk? Was it VEDS? Can we talk about it?
Sure.
Sure. You've been very open and candid about this genetic thing that you deal with, John. Would you mind kind of explaining it? However you'd like to.
Yeah. Well, when I was a child, when I was 5 years old, my mother passed away suddenly, unexpectedly, from what was explained as a heart attack. Mm-hmm. And she was only 36 years old. And, it didn't really set up any red flags because it was just sort of this fluke thing. And then when I was 42, seemingly healthy, doing fine, I had an aneurysm rupture in my abdomen after rock climbing the night before, actually. Mm. And I had emergency surgery where they repaired the bleeding internally. And all the doctors were scratching their heads like, why is this healthy guy, they're like, you don't use like a ton of heroin or something,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And why is this guy having an aneurysm rupture? Went to a bunch of specialists. While we were trying to figure out what the problem was, I had another event called an aortic dissection, which is where the lining of the inside of your aorta splits and the blood's kind of like pooling inside, and it can cause a massive rupture. I collapsed at home. I was rushed to open heart surgery at Tampa General Hospital, where they replaced my entire aortic arch and my ascending aorta with artificial Dacron parts. And at that point, they sent off some tissue for a genetic test, and it came back with this genetic condition called Vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And basically, it's a collagen disease. My body makes half of the collagen of a normal person, which is one of the building blocks of your arteries. So my arteries basically are made with half the material that they would typically have. And it's actually a slightly milder version of some more severe mutations of the same disease.
How does one react to hearing that kind of news? I mean, if I may, it sounds like, you know what? You have another head going out of the back of your head. What?
Yeah.
What? I'm sure you've never heard of this thing before.
Never heard of it. And it was weird because, for like 3-4 months, we were trying to figure out what it was and Googling everything, and it never really came up on the radar. But of course, with what happened to my mother, and she was adopted, so we didn't have family history on her, it started to sort of add up a little bit. Like, okay, here he is in his 40s, and he's having these major events.
But also by the time we discovered what it was, he'd had he'd spent a lot of time in the hospital. He'd had a lot of surgeries. He'd had a lot of events. So at first there was some comfort to having diagnosis. And then I think once we realized the gravity of the diagnosis, then the kind of shock sets in a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's there's not like a cure or anything for it, but by managing my blood pressure and keeping my activities, low, stress low, the heart rate and all those sort of things, I can reduce the strain on my vascular system.
Right.
And I've actually been able to do some research and some digging into my biological family history, and of course many of my the uncles and grandfather biological relatives did not know they had the condition and lived into their 60s. So it's something that you have to manage activity wise.
Do you take collagen injections of something?
There's, because of the way that the body works, my body is making collagen. There's nothing I can do to like make more. There are probably things I could do that would cause me to make less. So I do take lots of vitamin C. I take 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day, just to make sure that I'm not deficient in the parts that need to make collagen. But there's nothing I can do to make 60% or 70%. It's, the cure that's out there might be some kind of gene therapy, but it's not coming tomorrow.
Well, not to kind of go too far into sensitive areas, but this puts your kids at risk too, do you think?
It is hereditary, so it is definitely a concern for them, and it's something that we really don't talk about a whole lot publicly, because that'll be something that
it's there. We try not to discuss their medical history because that's their story to tell when they want to tell it. So
of course,
but like totally, my brother and sister do not have it,
because you have to think like, what if I had known that Jon had this when we were dating? Do you marry him? Because obviously his lifespan is shorter and he has a risk of passing it down. So there's all kinds of things when you're testing your children that you have to think about, life insurance. If you get them tested and you have a positive result, you don't get life insurance. And, they have to, they know their diagnosis. They know what their status is. And that's something that they'll have to think about when they date and when they get married and all of that stuff. So for that reason, it's hard sometimes not to talk about it because it's, you want to sort of get it off your chest, but we try to keep that to be their story. Totally
get that. Is it safe to say that all of this informs your traveling, the family, the togetherness? That's why, I don't know, I want to say that's not why you're doing it, but it's a good reason to take the four of you out and do cool stuff.
Why we're able to.
Yeah, it's why we're able to, because we were smart one of the smartest things we ever did when we were younger, when we first got married, was buy really, really good disability insurance. In fact, the Northwestern Mutual, who our policies are through, they bring us to like conferences and have us speak to their salespeople about like how to sell disability insurance, because we're like the prime example of why you should have it. So it's why we're able to do this, but also, it's like pack as much in as you can. I mean, I hate to sound fatalistic like that, but enjoy your life while you can, while you've got it to enjoy.
From your mouth to God's ear, whatever that expression is. I wish we all had that ability to do that. Jon, you're a writer. Why don't you write more? Why aren't you a professional writer?
Well, I spent the first part of my career, I was in higher education fundraising, and then I went to work
that's
as a
fun.
salesman. Yeah. And I went to work as a salesman for an oil distributor. Totally different, but I was good at it. And then at the time when I was still working full time, I wrote my first novel, which I self-published, and then all my medical down that I've got my sequel is completed, has been for a long time. I've been editing it forever and ever, for years. And all my friends are like, when's that book coming out?
All right.
It's still getting work. You know, and I just, you know, I enjoy writing I've written for Catalyst, and I've written for Northeast Journal, and I've written for probably just about every website in St. Pete at some point, because I enjoy writing about, you know, the things that we do in St. Pete, and I write a blog. But it's really something that I kind of dove into probably 5 or 6 years ago. I always enjoyed writing, but I had never finished anything, you know, prior to that.
Well, you have a very conversational way of talking that is, from my perspective, is rare and kind of something that I treasure, and I think they do at the Catalyst here too. I wish you'd do some more writing for us, so when you get back to town, you got 5 minutes. Let's talk.
That's a high compliment coming from you. I wish I could write as quickly as you do, because everything I read seems to come from you, and I'm like, how is Bill skinny like that? Now it takes me a month.
It's only because I've been doing it for so long, and I'm a one-trick pony. I can't even change a tire, believe me. Hey, can we meet the kids? Can they come over and say hi?
I'd like to say that when John and I first started dating, he said he wanted to be a writer. He showed me some of his things. I was like, you got some work to do. And he has the improvement in John's writing over the last like 10 years has been remarkable. I mean, I wouldn't read his stuff because he wouldn't edit it, and it annoyed me. And he's just gotten so much better. I'm very proud of him.
Kathy Salustri said, you know that both James and Anna have that same curly mop of hair. I read that. Yeah, and boy, hi guys.
Hi.
You having fun today?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Is it, I heard you went on a long bike ride today.
Yeah.
Yeah?
8 miles.
8 miles. Is that a long one for you, or is that kind of...
45 minutes.
No, we didn't. We did it in about 2 hours. we do bike a lot, but they're big. No, they're not. They're big walkers. We've trained them well on that.
What did you say you did? 10, 11 miles in Manhattan or something?
Yeah. Yeah,
not intentionally.
Yeah, we didn't do it on purpose. But by the time
it's
we got
never
back,
intentional up there.
Yeah, and I had run 10 miles that morning, so when I got back, my watch had 21 miles on it because I had done 10, and then we did 11 on foot, the 4 of us. So.
You ran the New York Marathon, didn't you?
I did. That was my first marathon, and I ran it on the John Ritter Foundation team, the Ritter Foundation team. So John Ritter, the actor from Three's Company, he died of an aortic dissection, and his widow started a foundation. And so I did it, and he raised like $3,000 to get on a charity team because I could never have qualified for the New York Marathon. And then I just discovered I really liked it, and found this just wonderful running community in St. Pete that I cherish really more than anything. I love St. Pete for so many reasons, but the running community is really fabulous. So now I really keep running marathons really so I can keep hanging out with my running friends.
I have a quote from you, Monica, that I think came from Facebook, where you said, COVID has us all making unexpected choices.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were involved with Preserve the Bird for quite a long time. I know this is a passion of yours. Yeah. And you've written about it, you've talked about it. I want to go on record as saying that you and I met when you were working for Ollie over at Eckerd, which is between tenures with historic preservation here in St. Pete.
Right.
And I'm going to give you credit for all these vintage St. Pete stories I do, because that time I was writing for Creative Loaf, and you took me on this I was on a little bus tour where we went to the old Playhouse Theater and into the Deuces. And it had a lot to do with saying, I'd really love to write about some of this stuff. It was you.
Excellent.
So,
excellent. I'm glad to hear
thank you. Okay. Yeah. You resigned recently. I mean, your reasons are your own. Do you want to talk, you want to say something to St. Pete, because obviously it's still a passion for you.
Oh yeah, I love it. I mean, I have been involved in one way or another with St. Petersburg Preservation, now Preserve the Bird, for almost since I moved here. I started doing, my cousin Ray was like, oh, you do walking tours, you should do tours for St. Petersburg Preservation. So I started as a volunteer, and then I was on the board. And then when they hired their when somebody made a donation in order to hire an executive director, I was the first executive director at a halftime position. And then I left and went to Eckerd for a little while. And then when I left Eckerd, I came back. The executive director had left. So I took the position again. And really at that point, I had intended to stay for at least 2 years. My goal was to kind of help them get, in a stable position again, and then help them look for, because really I think the organization needs that next level of executive director, somebody with real, I don't have a master's in historic preservation. I don't have any formal training in historic preservation, but obviously I have a deep love of St. Pete history and a real
I don't have a journalism degree. Your passion carries you,
It really does.
Yeah.
And, I believe strongly that St. Pete is such a unique place, and in order for cities to distinguish themselves in the 21st century, you've really got to maintain those unique characteristics. And so my work was really done from passion. So, and I had intended to stay longer, and I'd hoped to be able to work something out, to work part-time from the road, and just couldn't make it happen. And I have to say, really, I was disappointed. I wanted to make that work, but now that it's done and I've resigned, I have to say it's like I'm really grateful, because what a huge difference it is to be able to be on the road and not have to have work hanging over your head. It's pretty nice. So
things tend to work out,
Yeah, they do. And I'm very, very close with Emily Elwin and Peter Belmont, who are really kind of the linchpins, or two of the linchpins of that organization. And I'll always have some connection. I'll always, be involved and help out with Preservationist. It's kind of where really my heart lies with that organization. So I'll always be involved.
I think that one of the things that's so fascinating about not only history but historic preservation is that it's kind of limitless. You never get to a point, do you, where you say, okay, that's it. We got everything covered. Let's go get a sandwich,
So, I've been saying this on this trip. I started reading, so we watched Hamilton, and after watching, I never had any interest in early American history. And last year we went to Monticello.
Right.
And then we watched Hamilton, and so now I'm reading Chernow's book on Alexander Hamilton. And I'm like, just exactly what you're saying. I'm like, God, there's this whole area of history that I really had no interest in. And it's fascinating. Early American history is totally fascinating. And so it's just there's always one more area you can delve into. And in St. Pete, the same. You start drilling down into some of the African-American history of the city.
Yeah.
I was recently kind of discovering some Jewish history of the city. There's just all these layers. It is never ending. That's what I love about it. It's always like you're on a treasure hunt with a map. I agree.
If I say the name Grover C. Criswell to you, does that mean anything?
No.
Grover Criswell. This is my next vintage story. I'll tell you guys, because I'm so jazzed by this whole thing. Grover Criswell was the mayor of St. Petersburg Beach for 2 years in the early 60s after serving on the commission. But he was also a numismatist. He's a coin and money collector.
Yeah.
Right? And he had the world's largest and most expansive collection of Confederate money, and used to say, I'm the richest man in the world in Confederate money. and in fact, opened a museum on St. Petersburg Beach, which was very briefly listed in the whole sort of tourist attractions of the fabulous 60s. I remember they about that. Criswell's Money Museum on Corey Avenue. Thieves drilled a hole in the roof and stole half of his stuff. Anyway, he went on for many, many years to, I have him on To Tell the Truth and What's My Line, which is hilarious. But he went on to be, he wrote a bunch of books about it. He's real famous in numismatic circles. And he passed away in '99. It's this little tiny piece of St. Petersburg history. I can't wait to write about this.
That's it. I am
never heard of him before.
Lucky and grateful that I have this love of history, because it is this never-ending, cache of interesting stories. Did you read about Murph the Surf guy?
Yeah, just recently.
That was an interesting story in the Times today. I heard that name, but I never knew that he stole the Star of India or something. And there's all kinds of. I'll go down all kinds of little rabbit holes, and on any subject, and it's
Yeah.
never.
Well, you also, it was you who got me interested in the Manhattan Casino back in the day. And I did a vintage piece not long ago where I literally went through every single mention of the Manhattan Casino in the St. Petersburg Times for about a 50, 60-year span. I mean, it's doable, digitally.
Yeah.
And literally compiled the list of all the famous, semi-famous performers who'd appeared there. And there were a lot of names that nobody knew had ever appeared there. And some of the other ones, like Duke Ellington, never played there. Never did. And that's one of, Duke Ellington played here. He never did. Basie was there twice. James Brown was there with the Flames in '55 when they were just a singing group wearing white jackets, dinner jackets. I learned so much. And you're right. The more you dig into it, the more you want to learn. And you feel like,
well, Stokely Carmichael from the Civil Rights Movement says Stokely Carmichael spoke in the Snow Peak parking lot, right across from the Manhattan Casino. Like in the 60s, they had to run a power cord down, and nobody knows that. I mean, whenever I tell people that, and, not everybody knows who Stokely Carmichael is, but if you're into history at all, it's kind of like, wow, Stokely Carmichael was here. It's, there's all these things.
Oh yeah. When I was doing we could do this all day. When I was doing the piece on the St. Petersburg operetta, if you remember that whole thing, they had musical theater in the round in a circus tent on 4th Street. I am looking through the old newspapers.
I didn't know that.
I'll send you a link. It was I thought it was a good story. There was the theater downtown, a movie theater doubled as a playhouse, and this is something I need to look into because one of the weeks, for about 2 weeks, Burgess Meredith was there in some drama, and apparently it was continuing series. It's just something I need to dig up. This was downtown St. Petersburg in the early 50s. Amazing.
Yeah.
The operetta was a hoot.
You should be on the road with us because I go into these little towns and I go, I buy what's that press that does the picture books?
Is it Arcadia Press?
Yeah, Arcadia, with the Images of America. I mean, I must own one of those books for every small town because I get in and I have to learn about every little character. And we were in the Smokies before, and the little towns that were in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park in Shenandoah. Steads are still there. So you would love, if you like that kind of stuff, Bill, you would love being on the road in an RV. It's just this never ending, litany of these things that you can explore.
I should note that we probably have about 500 pounds of books in our RV right now.
Maybe you'd be moving a lot faster if you didn't have all those books.
Exactly.
With all the homeschooling materials, which the homeschool curriculum we're using is kind of literature based. So it's all these books that sort of tie into other subjects. And then every town we go into, there's a bookstore. We stopped at the Book Mine in Jacksonville before we even left the state of Florida. And
which is the greatest place in the entire world.
Your kids share your love of reading, and maybe not of reading, but
get them there.
Our son,
they're a little young, but yeah,
he's really into Fortnite, so which we didn't let him have before the pandemic. But so I think one of the reasons I read so much when I was young is because I was the youngest of 4 kids, and we had 2 TVs in the house, but you weren't allowed to use the one in my parents' room, so we really only had one, and I never got to choose what to watch. So that's why I read a lot when I was a kid. Whereas our kids, each have a tablet. We're ruining their minds already.
Well, I grew up in St. Petersburg, and the funny thing is, I didn't know any of the history of this city before I read Ray Arsenault's book in maybe the 90s or something. And then it's like, wow, there's all this cool stuff happened here I didn't know about.
Yeah.
We are actually out of time.
I think we must be.
4 minutes over. I have my stopwatch here because I did a 45-minute one last week, and then I did one that was 24 minutes, and I dropped it. So, what a pleasure to talk to you guys.
So good to talk to you too, Bill. We're gonna go ride our bikes some more and see Skull Cave in the middle.
Oh yeah, send us some pictures from the road.
See the lighthouse back there?
Yeah, you had it in your palm before, John.
I had I had the computer out. So. Good to talk to you, Bill. Thanks for having us.
Jon and Monica Kile, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your trip and on into the future, and check in with us again, okay?
We will. Thanks, Bill. Bye.
See you soon.